Right there, didn't I?
Just chose the right side.
Cops will be in to talk to you in a minute. Here we go. Good afternoon and welcome to City Council Finance Committee meeting of January 18th, 2024. 4 items on the agenda. First of these is discussion regarding the mid-year budget review. Mr. Francisco.
There's two.
Thank you, sir.
That's maybe we should get around. Council may recall that our net revenue stabilization fund requires that we do a mid-year budget review after the fiscal year ending audit has been accepted by the council. And that one of the things that we do at that mid-year budget review is for council to consider whether we want to make a rainy day fund deposit, keep things as they are, that sort of thing, and then just kind of get a look at where things are. So that's what we have here. You'll see that we're starting with the general fund, and I have printed out some summary information for the major funds where there was some, lack of a better term, some action going on, some interesting things that I wanted to discuss with council. So first in the general fund, and I've just highlighted a few things. On the revenue side, which is toward the top, we're kind of right on budget so far this fiscal year, and we've talked about that in these meetings. I did want to point out on line 22, the substantial increase in the capital outlay expenditures, and you'll see that that is reimbursed from Fund 37. But you'll recall that in this fiscal year, we supplemented the usual capital outlay money that goes for vehicle replacement with some general fund money and with some seizure fund money. So that's why in a normal year, we spend about $4.5 million on those sorts of things, and this year we're projecting to spend about $11.5 million. So that was a council decision that was made very much in the light of day, where you wanted to spend some of that one-time fund balance money down on vehicle replacements and some other one-time capital things, and so that's what you see there. Online,
That's not just vehicles.
it's not just vehicles, but yeah, it's all replacement equipment. Do we have one more? Did you keep one?
Thank you.
On line 47 and 49, you see the ongoing transfers or subsidies, if you will, that are being made from the general fund to the PSST fund into the transportation fund. There are some one-time expenditures in the transportation fund, you'll recall, for those buses that are being replaced. Some of that money is being reimbursed from grant funds, but the upfront money is coming from the general fund. On line 63 then, you see that on a net basis, we are projecting that we will spend down about $4.8 million. We will spend about $4.8 million more than we will take in this fiscal year. And we would close this fiscal year with a reserve of $13.4 million, which is about $10.3 million in excess of the minimum reserves that we are mandated to have in the general fund. Now, we've been talking about those things. I think council's made some very prudent decisions about not adding a whole lot of ongoing expenses with that fund balance, but I would direct your attention to line 63. And you see that we have in fact added a lot of ongoing expenses. We've added about 30 positions in the general fund, and we've given some fairly substantial pay raises in citywide positions that are affecting the general fund. And so you see that on an ongoing basis, we are projecting that we're going to be drawing down general fund balance, spending more than we're taking in each of the next 5 fiscal years. To the extent that if our projections are exactly right, we will have wiped out our fund balance 4 years from now. And so, again, I was once, well, you said we were going to be drawing down our fund balance. And then this one customer looked back where we projected we would be 4 years from now, 4 years hence. And so just know that I don't foresee that our job is to be right with these projections. Our job is to show you what the trends are if we stay on the trends that we are on, in a hope that we won't stay on those trends. We need to do something so that we aren't continuing to draw down our fund balances, whether that is reducing positions, slowing down our costs, increasing in various areas, or whatever it may be. But if we stay on these trends, we're going to wipe out our fund balances. And that's why, it's very short-sighted to just look at the $10 million of fund balance in excess of our minimum right now without looking at the longer-term picture. That if we stay on the trends that we are on, it will not be healthy, okay? Any questions on the general fund?
Yes, ma'am.
This doesn't take into account like a $6 million check for,
It does
paying
not.
on Griffin.
It does not, nor does it take into account the $900,000 to buy Hutner land. Those are not in here. What is in here are the things that council has already appropriated, but things that you've not appropriated yet or that you might appropriate in the future is not accounted for in here.
And so the market trends affect this, but also there are things we can do.
There are absolutely things you can do. You can keep an eye on positions and holding positions vacant as long as you can. You can reduce positions in some targeted areas. You can slow down the rate of increase in the growth in that salary and benefit category, which is on line 33. That is just a formula-driven increase of about 5% per year. But as you see, 5% is $4.5 million a year of growth without adding anything. So you can take some steps to try to slow down that rate of growth. Not giving as high increases that we have given in the last couple of years, those sorts of things. Trying to rein in on our health insurance claim costs. All of those things are impacting on that salary and benefit category. And that is the biggest thing in the general fund.
In the transit,
Trying to get a handle on the transfers to the transit fund and or the public safety sales tax fund. We've talked about those things, yes.
I think the biggest cost in that transit is the on-demand program.
Yeah, that's the
That's
biggest
why we'll have to,
new cost, yeah.
we'll have to make a decision, like I've mentioned before, about our current paratransit system, the on-demand system, and we're funding both of them, and they're both very expensive. And there's some overlap in service. I think staff is working on figuring out a way to make the paratransit system an on-demand system so that we're not doing both necessarily. And the paratransit system serves the whole city limits too, so. But it's been a pilot program. I think that's part of what we wanted to see was how much would this cost, and is it something we could sustainably afford to do in its current form? Or what adjustments can we make to that to keep it, but not, cost as much as this potentially?
And just to go back to positions, are we talking positions that have been vacant for years?
No, not necessarily. It's usually vacant for weeks or months. But as you see there on line 58, we make an educated guess about the net impact of holding those positions vacant. That would save us about $800,000 a year. But if we hold positions vacant longer, that savings could increase. So those are sorts of things that are relatively controllable.
Maybe put a pause on hiring in certain places.
Yes. And logistically speaking, we have in place what's called smart hiring freeze, where before positions are filled, myself, the HR director, and the city manager has to approve the position to be filled. So within that process and within that mechanism, we could say, and this is while I was working for Oklahoma City, we would do this, where an employee would leave at a high salary, might get paid out for 3 or 4, 6 months of vacation leave or sick leave. Those one-time costs had to be worked off before you could fill the position. Those are not things that we have done here, but that we could consider.
I think that's a wise move. It draining the bucket faster.
Yeah, y'all could say it also, reduces the services, because that person that would otherwise be filling the position is not out there doing the work, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of ironic because I was on the city job postings today, just kind of taking a look and saw that the assistant city manager is still vacant and posted, so, or maybe there have been,
Yeah, that's a position that was budgeted for the full year. We've not filled it yet, so there will be some salary savings built up from that position.
right,
Yes, sir.
If I recall, last year, PSST and Transit weren't needing a general fund subsidy. This year, they're both
Yeah, the
needing both.
The transit fund has mostly to do with that new service. The PSST fund has to do with the 4 SROs that were added and just the impact of those salary increases.
Overtime, those 4 overtime.
Yes. No, all positions.
Oh, okay, okay.
And that aerial ladder apparatus that was added via amendment.
Okay.
But a piece of equipment is a one-time
Right.
with no tail, right? People
Yes, sir.
have tails.
So that $3 million in transit, that the on-demand program this year, and then that would include
And the bus.
the bus purchases and stuff. Okay, so that's why it tails or it gets cut in half in the projected years, I guess, would be, we might not be buying, 3 or 4 large buses at once. Okay.
So the next fund for your consideration is the rainy day fund, the net revenue stabilization fund. And again, what you're mandated to do is to take a look at this fund. And down there at the bottom, you see that in column C, we are projecting that we will close this fiscal year $388,000 in excess of what we have to have in the rainy day fund. The line just above that, we're about $655,000 short of the 5% targeted rainy day fund balance. So the question would be, do you want to make a deposit to the rainy day fund to bring it up to its targeted level? Do you want to kind of stay as they are? Remember that a lot of these, it's 5% of expenditures. So where we've made a bunch of one-time expenditures in the general fund, that raises that targeted fund balance. And so, it might not be as unhealthy to maintain it at a level below the targeted level in the short term. But again, I'll just totally leave that up to your discussion. If you decide to make a deposit, our job would be to come to you with an appropriation item from the general fund balance to the rainy day fund, and we do that on your direction.
What are your thoughts?
Okay, so the 4% target is 3,900,000, is that what I'm?
Yes,
And the current balance is 4.6 million, so we're above by around 700,000.
we're above by about 388,000. That's at the very bottom line there.
Okay.
We're mandated to have a rainy day fund balance, a minimum of about 4.2 million.
Okay. So, I mean, we're above the minimum, but we could be better. That's not something you say is urgent, so.
Yeah, again, for several years running, we have brought the rainy day fund balance up to its targeted level. And that's totally up to the council to decide. In this year, though, because there are so many one-time expenditures driving up that target, you might want to consider whether you want to do that this year. Totally
Yeah.
your consideration.
Might wanna, might be okay holding off on it.
I would agree. It just, let's let it fly for a second, hopefully. Yes, ma'am.
if conditions change and it was not a problem, you could do it mid-year or another time?
You
have
could
to do-
always make an appropriation to the rainy day fund balance or from the rainy day fund balance, given those conditions that, there's been a federally declared disaster
Right.
or a state declared disaster.
Okay, so we could add to it anytime.
Well, but nothing gets any cheaper, and that's I think the game that goes in my mind is, would we have enough, say something bad happened, dam busted, or, well, dam wouldn't be our problem. Something busted like the dam busted.
We'd have some problems there. We'd have to replace an arena or something like that, you know.
And so how do we do that? Is there enough to be able to do it? That'd be a FEMA thing by that time, so.
Well, I mean, the library, how is,
Oh, yeah.
We're
are we
replacing,
upfronting the cost of that?
we're
Hoping to get-
upfronting the cost of that out of the 1% emergency allocation in the general fund. Going back to the general fund, that is on line 53. And as you see, we projected we're going to spend that emergency reserve 1%. We hope that we don't have to, but it looks like we're going to.
How would you describe the difference of the emergency reserve and the rainy day fund?
The emergency reserve is actually appropriated money. It is in the budget. It's under the purview of the city manager to spend it. And for example, with the library, he chose to spend it. Let's get that money up front and let's get the library fixed. There would need to be a council action before the rainy day fund could be appropriated. There has to be an appropriation and for some general purpose that you would direct. So that's the biggest difference. And again, even before you can make appropriations in the net revenue stabilization fund, there are some strings attached. There has to be a federally declared disaster, or there has to be a state declared disaster, or some major one-time expense that cannot be covered out of the 1% emergency reserve or normal general fund balances.
Okay, thanks.
So did I hear kind of a consensus that you want to leave the rainy day fund alone for now?
Yeah.
I think, yes, sir.
Okay. The next fund then is the public safety sales tax. We've kind of touched on these things. You see on line 10, the funds that are coming in from the general fund. I did want to point out on line 12 that while we have added the 4 SROs, we do not project that there's any increase to the money that the school district is paying in for the SRO program, except the ongoing formula-based 5% increase. So that's all that's in there.
Does this take into account what we were paying in overtime, what we are paying in overtime?
Only for this projected year. After that, it's just formula-based. And again, on line 40, you see that we project that we will continue to have to require subsidies from the general fund, and we will still have a negative fund balance in the public safety sales tax fund. Now, again, that was anticipated. That's why after the critical capital needs are done, public safety sales tax revenues and expenditures will fold into the general fund. But it will be an expense in excess of what the public safety sales tax is bringing in.
So please go ahead.
So we're talking 1/2 of 1% of sales tax. What would it take to make up the deficit if we decided that we were gonna change that percentage?
That would take a vote of the people.
It would. But what would we change it to? Not to,
Just as we made projections back then that led council to do a 1/2%, although we thought it would be more like 5/8. Council could direct, let's go to 5/8 or let's go to 3/4 and put that as a referendum to the vote of the people.
would,
So again, you remember when we were talking about the SRO program, and what if we were to add 13 more SROs, how much that would cost? And that would be about $4 million a year. That in and of itself would be about another 1/4% to pay for that program, so.
So from 0.5 to 0.75. And a full percent if we wanted to fund a full SRO program and make the PSST fund balance, or generate more than it takes out.
Yeah, at least for the foreseeable future. And again, and this is what was interesting. We projected that in the first 3 to 4 years, it would cover its cost, but that at some point in the future, the lines would cross. We knew that would happen, and that's why the ordinance was written the way that it was. But, it happened a lot quicker than we thought.
Yeah.
1% is a lot of money.
Yeah, especially when you consider that there will probably be the Regional Transit Authority sales tax proposal coming
Yeah.
forward.
For 8.75, so that,
Yeah,
what would that take if we increase the PSST by 0.5%,
that'll be 9.25.
9.25, and then a potential transit or regional transit? Yeah, that would be difficult to get close to 10 like that. Yeah. Sales tax.
I don't know that that's a magic number or not, but it sure is in my mind. When we think of those of us that are on fixed incomes,
Yeah,
it makes a heck of a difference. And it's, the ideas are nice, they're cool, they're worth doing, but can we afford them? I don't drive a Mercedes. So, yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah. It's a
And
hard,
just since we were talking about it with the 13, doesn't the county have PSST funds as well?
Yes. Now, they have different purposes for their PSST. They have the operation of the jail and the sheriff's department. But yes, they do have a dedicated public safety sales tax.
that was part of the sales tax that built the jail that they didn't renew all of, that we renewed part of for transit.
Right. They have some excess public safety sales tax funds that they use for purposes like, we just got a grant from the county for those drones in the fire department. That came from their excess public safety sales tax.
Okay.
So opportunities for partnership if they really wanted to do that in the schools.
I'm not going here.
You're not gonna wander in that pond?
The next fund is the seizure and restitution fund, and I just wanted to point out here that I stood corrected from what I said earlier in one of these meetings where we did start this fiscal year with a fund balance in that fund of about $1.7 million. We're projecting to draw that down for those vehicle replacements and end this fiscal year at about $226,000. Now, my understanding is that there are some cases that are being adjudicated that would potentially increase that, but we don't book that until the money actually comes in.
I saw it correct on our agenda. It was a, up 42.2% this year, the fines and forfeiture.
Oh, yes, that's in the general fund.
Okay. But I had seen a candidate running for council talk about the seizure fund and how he wished the council would use it, and there was a lot of money in it, but I guess they weren't aware that we had spent pretty much all of it on the new vehicles. That, how long did it take to get those in? It was like 18 months to get those cars?
Those
in?
particular ones, I think, is more like 6 to 8 months.
Okay, so,
They're just sedans. The thing that takes time there is the fancy suspension and the extras.
do we see it on here when we actually receive them, as far as?
No, as far as what would show up here is just expenditure of money.
So it already showed, we've spent the money?
We're showing this
don't
that we
have to-
spent the money in.
Okay, so we don't have to wait till we actually get them. Okay. So, perfect.
The next fund then is the parking and transit fund. And again, I just wanted to show you on line 17 where that money is coming in from the general fund. And we're projecting that we would end this fiscal year and each fiscal year going forward with a $508,000 positive fund balance. That will go away. We seek in this fund and every special revenue fund to end the fiscal year with a zero fund balance. And so that would be our projection for this fund going forward.
What will that be spent on or used for?
It would reduce the subsidy.
Okay, okay.
So the transit tax by itself is generating 3.1 million,
Yes.
and then we're getting 2.3 from the federal government per year. And 150,000 from ODOT. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
The next fund is the water fund. I see Mr. Madenwald is here. The main things I wanted to point out there in this fiscal year in column C is the $35 million worth of capital projects that we're projecting to spend down. We won't spend that much, but there are some major capital projects underway for the automated meter systems, the computer systems related to those things, replacement of lines, all of those things taken together are ongoing projects that will happen. We probably won't spend that much down this year, but if we do, we would end this fiscal year with a fund balance of $2.5 million. And then going forward, council just needs to be aware that in order to maintain the capital program that we know that we have to do to replace those iron pipes and that sort of thing, we're going to need another rate increase. It may not be for another year or two or three, but just know that in order to do the capital programs that we've already mandated ourselves to do, we're going to need revenues to pay for it. Am I misstating anything?
He says it so cavalierly. Yes, ma'am.
I would like to see a roadmap for votes that we need to plan for, whether it's every 2 years, just to figure out. I know there's things on the horizon with the EPA, but we can't go another 5 years.
I would agree with you. I think that's one of the things that we could improve on generally, knowing, 2 years from now, we're gonna have to have a rate increase, because I thought it was solid waste. I didn't think we'd have to go back to water, but that's
We'll
all
get to
right.
that in a minute.
Oh,
Yeah.
When we did the cost of service study for the water rate increase, it did look at maybe in fiscal year 27, we might be coming back. And that somewhat depended on new regulations and things that might come through. So if we're able to push that out further, we would look to do that.
but they're legitimate, and we've got to do them, and it's just a matter of not hiding our head in the sand. It's a matter of, like you say, getting out in front of it and knowing that we're gonna have to do it and getting the numbers ready and asking the people, and if they agree.
Yeah, I was gonna say that we've got to get out of the habit of going 8, 9, and 10 years. And, 4 years, I mean, any increase is difficult for everybody that's on a fixed income, like you mentioned. But, I mean, all the cities around us raise their rates yearly by a small percent. And then they don't have to raise it by a large percent all at once every, half of a decade. And so, I mean, 2027 would be 4 years since the one we just passed. I mean, that should be more than reasonable, I think, to keep up with the stuff that, I mean, the most important piece of infrastructure in the city is water, right? And so, and it's not gonna get less expensive to deal with and treat, and so, yeah. The strategic water supply plan had like a calendar of election
Yeah.
dates, but I mean, that was 2012, 13, so might need to look back on that, but it kind of laid out a little bit of building groundwater treatment, building
Sewage.
reuse infrastructure, and stuff like that. And I guess some anticipated regulatory changes that might happen, but after 10 years, I think there's probably new regulatory things we didn't even think about then, so.
Copper and lead. I
Yeah,
mean,
the copper and lead regulation is a big deal. That's something that you as trustees of the utility authority need to keep that in your mind. It is something that we're going to have to do and that our private property owners are gonna have to do.
And the microplastics thing. I saw the article this week about the bottled water, all the bottled water testing positive for not only did they find that the water inside the bottles has plastic from the bottle in it, and this is various bottled water brands too, but have those microplastics that we've been talking about in executive session, like DuPont and all that. Or what's the exact term that you've been telling us?
PFAS.
Yes, and I've been telling people for years that drink bottled water all the time, that you're 90% chance that if you live in a city like Norman, that your municipal tap water is gonna be safer and cleaner, and it's like 5 times cheaper per gallon, but,
yeah. Well, that's what I was talking about when we were doing retreat, about looking every 3 years and looking at those. So it, actually, going back to a year, and just doing it as a regular exercise, of what we need to do would probably be easier to put something off than it is to do it, but sometimes we just need to flat do it.
Yeah.
It's not good politically, but, because we're. all-
Costly in the long run, more costly in the long run to wait, so.
So as the mayor anticipated, the next fund is the wastewater reclamation fund. You see that we are projecting that, given the capital program that we have ongoing, we projected we'll spend down about $6.5 million this fiscal year, and end this fiscal year with a fund balance of $883,000, which down there on line 46 is $1.6 million short of our mandated reserves in that fund. And I know that this has been something that has been on council's agenda, but just know that this is demonstrating financially that we need to be considering that fund in the near future. It's not a long-term thing here.
That was, what did we say last time, 2014 was the last water reclamation, right, so 10 years. I think it'd be 10 years this November or December, if I recall. Since the last rate increase for wastewater, water reclamations.
Do you have a wag as to what that's gonna look like? 0.5%?
We looked at it with the cost of service study when we did the water, and they were looking at about 10%.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think, Anthony, with us looking at trying to get the centrifuges under an OWRB loan, we might be able to help that fund along a little bit better and make our fund balance look a little bit better this year, but knowing that we're paying interest on that for that period of time for that equipment.
Yes, sir.
And the last rate increase went towards, in large part, to the $50+ million expansion and upgrade of the treatment plant. And all of that's been finished and done as promised,
That was in 2013, I see.
2013. So everything, though, that voters approved then, though, has been done when it comes to that last rate increase.
2013 sounds like yesterday, but it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Over 10 years ago.
The next fund I wanted to draw your attention to is the New Development Excise Tax Fund. Again, this is development fees that are paid upon building permit issuance, and it can only be used for the expansion and improvement of the sewer system. You see that in column C, on line 21, we're projecting to draw down about $5 million in this fund this fiscal year, which if we do that, we would close this fiscal year with a negative fund balance in that fund. Now, Mr. Sturts is here, we probably won't spend that money down that quickly, but if we do, that fund is gonna have some trouble. And then in the next fiscal year, you see that there's $6 million that are planned to be spent, and I believe that is for that southeast lift station. There is some money that would come in from the developers for that if we proceed, but just know that in our current circumstance, we would not be able to do that. We'd have to delay that. Now, whether that would be that, you know, the full cost of the lift station is gonna come from the developer fees or what, just know that there needs to be some changes to the trends in this fund.
Ouch.
The sanitation fund, and I know that you're about to consider a cost of service study in the sanitation fund, but you see that the sanitation fund, given a $16 million revenue sources, is fairly breaking even on an ongoing basis. You may want to be considering some additional programs in that area, some accelerated capital equipment replacements and that sort of thing. But again, I would wait and see what happens with that cost of service study about what you might do with the sanitation fund.
And if I recall, the last rate increase for that was 2011 or 14, one of those two. I want to say 2011.
I don't even remember.
I want to say it took effect like early 2014. The vote was in 13, but
It may have been the first thing that I voted to send to voters.
2011.
Okay, so before I was even here. So, 13 years since the last rate increase for sanitation. I would wonder if there's like another city in the whole United States that's gone that long, of our size. Good job by our staff, I would say, from,
Oh, trash guys rule.
yeah.
414 was the vote for recycling to go.
For the recycling.
Okay. But that wasn't the sanitation rate increase,
No,
that was just for,
to address the increase in cost of recycling.
I was just curious, since we're talking about that litter cleanup crew, that's not in the sanitation?
It would be in the sanitation fund. I don't know that it's projected in here right now.
Okay.
I don't know if they've been added until the spring cleanup period.
There's not a heck of a lot of wiggle room in there.
That wasn't a program that was envisioned to be in the sanitation fund, so.
How
it would
were
be
we-
an additional
Oh.
cost.
Were we splitting it?
It would need to be split because to the extent you're providing services.
Better sanitation.
Yeah, we don't want the sanitation fund paying for those services, because those are the rate payers. But so we would have to figure out an appropriate split if that's the direction of council.
And the other was environmental, is that right? It just is a broad
It would be
category?
general fund.
Oh, general
Yeah.
fund, okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay, thank you.
The next fund I just wanted to briefly touch on is the Norman Forward Fund. You see that we are rapidly spending down the bond money that was appropriated into that fund, and we are spending down the pay-as-you-go money, particularly for the Young Family Athletic Center, but the fund is okay. We'll be considering ongoing capital projects in that fund that are not built in here yet. There's just about $600,000 per year built in, but on an ongoing basis, and the real leadership of the Citizens Financial Oversight Board, this fund is doing okay. And getting all of those brick and mortar facilities built in the first half of the tax period and paying the debt service and all of those things, so,
And that's got 7 more years
yes.
on it? 6?
yeah.
Yes, sir.
We're about 90%, we're over 90% done, I'd say.
Of the brick and mortar
Yeah,
projects, yeah.
projects. And so we've talked about the Norman Forward 2 in the future and stuff like that, and about pay-go versus bonding out like we do now and then paying interest, and wondering what other things we could do if we didn't have to pay millions in interest,
Yeah.
you know, on those bonds, and talking to our constituents about like, you know, the value in, if you can wait a couple of years, basically, if you don't have to have it right now, if you can wait, we can pay it as we go, then we can save probably several $1 million and we can do more stuff, you know?
That would be a good comparison to be able to get out just as an educational tool as to how much the money's gonna cost us if we go pay-go. And although we don't have a set of ideas that are gonna go down in that plan, we know about how much we spent last time. If we do that again, just as a hypothetical, how much would we save if we did it pay-go? And then instead
And
of
how
doing it
long would the
instead of
projects
bonding.
have had to been delayed?
Yeah.
How much in interest would you guess that we've paid over?
Now, I could give you that, but I'm gonna guesstimate that over the life of the bonds, we will have paid about $30 million of interest.
$30
Yes.
million? That's,
That's a bunch of pay.
build another library for that. You could build a lot of stuff for that, so.
But would you have wanted to wait to
Right,
build the
exactly.
LIFAC
It's fun to
until,
get it all done,
till
you know.
2028
Exactly,
or
and,
2029?
You know, it's fun for elected officials to say, hey, I got that thing built, and it's fun for the community to be able to use it as right away too, but that's, you know, something I would want our residents to really think about is $30 million, is it worth $30 million to get it done 3 years faster or something like that?
Well, and the question on that is, we've talked about stormwater going on a pay-go basis. And so how much are we gonna add to bills, water bills, et cetera? We're going back into that, stretching that finite amount of money that's coming in for all of us.
And then finally, I just wanted to point out the Center City TIF Fund.
Oh, yeah.
which has an unreserved balance we're projecting of about $3.8 million at the end of this fiscal year after the expenditure for that study that is ongoing. So again, this is money that's waiting for projects. And I know that there have been some proposed projects, particularly for alleyway improvements and that sort of thing, but that is not projected to be spent this fiscal year.
I thought we talked about that 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I get off on time. But we had
Scott,
decided,
I know that they had looked at some individual projects in the Campus Corner area, but I don't know that there's been any contracts awarded or anything like
okay,
that.
We had the consultant, I think, working on a plan for us.
Yeah.
to Identify projects, right?
Yeah,
The
they're working on
timing.
taking the existing plan and updating it and giving us a little more direction on prioritizing the projects.
I know I got an email criticizing me for not spending that yet, and I thought, okay, well,
We'll have a plan that'll give us a guide to spend it the most efficiently, I think.
Yeah, and that's again, the thing about, TIF funds is that they have to be used for approved projects. You can't just willy-nilly do anything with it, so.
which is a good thing. I mean, that's the whole idea of setting up, well,
I think we're getting close to deciding on what we're gonna be spending on. I think we're getting there.
well,
For anybody curious.
That's all I have on the mid-year review. If there's any other questions?
hearing that, yeah.
The next item of business is the fee review that council wanted to mandate. I'm just going to pass around some background information for you. Not going to expect you to read it or memorize it here at this meeting. But in your spare time, please take time to look over this updated revenue manual that basically shows you all of the revenue and fee sources that the city has, the ordinance that approves them, that sort of thing, how much revenue comes in from those sources. And then as we're moving into the budget process, please just let us know. You can individually send us emails or send an email to the mayor, blind copy to me or that sort of thing about things that you want to concentrate on, that you want to increase the alcoholic beverage tax. That's just what my eyes happen to follow. And what would need to be done to do that. And we'll work on those things as we move on into the budget process.
Thank you.
What's a package store?
The package store is a liquor store, basically.
Oh, okay. $900 a year.
Yeah, you see that we're giving an inter-city comparison about what we charge compared to what Oklahoma City or Edmond or Broken Arrow charges for those similar, hopefully same fees, but there are going to be some differences between cities.
Is OMMA gonna regulate our ability to tax if it were to be?
Some of these things, yes. Alcoholic beverage, for example, is something that we can't individually tax.
Okay,
But, there is information given in this manual for various things, what we have control over, what the state partner parole board might have control over, those sorts of things.
thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I noticed a lot of not applicable, so like a dispensary renewal, they don't have to do that in OKC, or that was just information that wasn't available?
I think it's information that wasn't available. In that particular case, they may not have a fee for renewal.
So licensing I feel like they do have licensing inspections, like base fee. I'm like in OKC's column, where ours is 35. I'm pretty sure we just had this discussion because we talked about raising that.
I think we have. We didn't have any numbers at the time, and we didn't have this kind of a charted out comparison, which made it kind of hard. It was all.
This is very difficult to compare because there's no standardized fee schedule between all the cities. They all kind of use their own justification, and Some use square feet, some use the valuation of the building, for building permits, for example. So, we went through all the ordinances for these cities, and sometimes they don't have individual fee amounts listed in their ordinances. We left a message or whatever, and they haven't gotten back to us. So some of the not applicables mean that they don't charge for that. Some cities, if there's a state charge for some of the marijuana licenses, then they let the state handle that, and they don't internally, charge a fee for that. Same with like water wells, things like that. So some don't charge those fees, and some were just unable to find the specific fee for that.
Yeah, and what I will say is that Kim and Jacob did a really great job on these intercity comparisons. What I asked them to do is just kind of narrow it down to where there's a representative number of cities that have the same fee. I was actually amazed that there are this many, that we have a comparable fee. But I mean, there's a lot. So again, just take your time, read through it, say,
If we could raise it or not, because that's what you were saying earlier about how we might think about the future general fund. So if we wanted to go, just for example, we saw that we were charging less than the other cities on winemaker OK annual. I think ours is in the, where was it? Sorry, all the lines.
50.
Yeah. I think I'm winemaker annual, because ours is 500, OKC is 750, Broken Arrow is 600, Edmond is 625, Midwest City 625, Wanton's funny, I'm gonna skip it, and 625 in Tulsa. So like if we wanted to raise it to be in the vicinity of these other, well, Lawton's $69, so I don't want to go down.
All of them are,
Yeah.
just have a standard.
Yeah, so again, what you would do there is send an email to the mayor and to me, say, I really want to look at this winemaker fee. I want to get up to at least the level that some other cities are charging. I
Yeah,
maybe want to
let's
use it for
say-
this. That's what we want you to do.
Like say you don't want to be OKC at 750, but you don't want to stay at 500, say 625. Because that's like in between, like again, I'm ignoring Lawton, but
Well, and it would also depend on how many winemaker licenses are in the city limits. Probably not many. Probably a lot more marijuana licenses than there are wine licenses. That's just a wag, I don't know. Yes, sir.
So some of these, so with alcohol so alcohol is an example, like what is the basis for these numbers? Like why $1,000 for a brewer? Does it cost us $1,000 to inspect them every year?
I would refer you back to the background information that's in this document.
Okay.
But again, yes, there would have usually been some study that was done by the administering department about how much it costs to administer that fee. Or is it a regulatory fee? That we're charging this fee for regulatory purposes? There's differences about why we charge a fee and how much. So again, I can't just give you a general answer other than to say, look back in here and see what the legislative history is.
Well, I'd be, interested to know if we're charging too much, like, as far as like being pro-business, collect back whatever it takes for us to administer services or inspections or whatever. But like, what if we wanted to entice a winemaker to come here or a wholesaler? And we have a $2,000 fee, and Oklahoma City appears to not have one. We'd still be the lowest of Broken Arrow, Edmond, and Midwest City, but it's like, does it cost us $2,000 a year to do that? Is that something we need to have at all, or?
And is that a decision maker about
Yeah.
whether a business would come here or leave?
Right, yeah. Does that mean anything at all? So I think definitely interested to know which ones we might not be charging enough for, or which ones are we maybe charging too much for as well, that we might be able to lower, and maybe that helps, another bar open in Norman or another restaurant or something.
Because generally speaking, non-regulatory fees are supposed to be set to recover the cost of providing the service that that fee is paying for. So you don't want to get too far too low
Sure.
or too far too high.
Most of our fees are in like the 50 to 100 to,
Easily recoverable.
yeah. Alcoholic beverages being, I don't really drink, but I do work in a bar, and I don't know if that's like just left over from old days, like sin taxes or some sort of just arbitrary numbers that were brought up, but I will read through this for sure. I appreciate you providing that to us.
So, I might not be seeing it real quick, but let's say we have RV parks coming, and that's gonna be something that probably is a more intense use than we've had. That would be something we'd look at raising.
Yeah, there is a fee for development review, okay? So just because it's an RV park, there isn't a specific fee for that I am aware of.
Okay.
But again, that's something that you might want to consider.
When I read the hotel motel tax stuff, they do not come underneath it. We're gonna try and change that. Because we could use that, those people traveling in from Alabama in those big RVs. Nothing against Alabamans, but
I thought we did have a fee for scooters.
scooters? Oh, electric.
We do it through the revocable permit process,
Okay.
and so it's not an adopted
It's not its own.
fee within the ordinances.
Oh, Tulsa's got $20 per scooter. I wonder if that's about recovering them or not having them abandoned all over the
Or
place.
discouraging them.
Or discouraging them, yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
Man, you guys are really studying. I didn't want to take your time on this. I just wanted
No,
to
it's
take your time.
interesting.
It's fascinating to see how much we have in fees, because if you think about it, it's another tax that we're putting on there. It's an additional cost of doing business. And I'm sure they're appropriate. It's overwhelming when it's pages.
Is more not, do they not have it just available data?
In this particular case, more, is considered not that comparable of a city. They're quite a bit smaller. They do business differently.
Yeah, they do. All right. Any more questions for Mr. Francisco? Hearing none. Item 3, internal audit programs status. Ms. Shakira.
Sit at the table, I don't keep talking on the mic spot.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gray. Hello, Shakira County City Auditor. So, I've sent back the edits to the internal audit charter and received some edits from Mayor Heckler. So, I have, would say, a development for an investigation that I've been working on, but wouldn't be comfortable speaking on a public forum. I think that's more for a quorum or executive session. Sorry. So, just where are we with audit committee? I spoke to, Public Works Brandon, was with him today during RFP proposal interviews, and he instructed me on how they basically survey for citizen members of their committee to basically do those interviews. So I was hoping I could follow that same or have council be educated on that process.
We can sure talk about that. My thing is one person.
Yes.
I noticed in yours you had several persons. Now, the audit committee, just taking a general consensus of us, do you want that to be this committee including all council members? Or do you want what do you want?
What do I want? For us to account for transparency, accountability, and just fairness. So I think two people from the public to sit on the committee would provide that balance. It could be all of the city council members, but as far as having the transparency and accountability, I believe two people at large from the public that, of course, have experience in auditing or accounting should be on the committee.
Why two versus one?
Because they would be outnumbered by council members if it's only one. Or they may be influenced or just feel overpowered or with
And again,
the majority of the
council's
committee
decision, but that would not be a finance committee of the council.
Right.
If you can certainly form another committee that would have two accounting types on it, but that would be a new committee in my
I
opinion.
would think that that's what we're headed towards, which is not my original thought. My original thought was that it'd stay with us, but what's council think?
I'm okay with two qualified individuals, because I would say not all of us on council are accountants, with the exception of Councilmember Montoya. We're
Well-
CPAs.
I mean, I appreciate the efforts in trying to establish, a separate committee, but, in my opinion, I think it should be this committee.
Agreed.
To create a new committee that would be made up of council members and then members of the public. As a professional who works 6 days a week, I think a large challenge is going to be finding somebody from the public that's qualified, who has the time to serve on a committee. So I think it would just be best suited for it to be this committee, to be on the audit committee, because I just don't think that we'll find the people from the public to serve on a separate audit committee.
I understand what you're saying, but with the
I mean,
process.
because, in public accounting right now, I know how buried
Right. And
every
it's tax
single
season.
CPA and internal auditor is right now.
Right.
So, and those are the folks who are qualified to serve on an audit committee. It's
By your
either, a CPA, someone who's a certified, fraud examiner, the CIA, and so on.
Exactly.
And those people are going to be extremely busy working.
Okay, so so on this committee, right, it's council members and only council members, correct? Okay. And with the expected date of actually having a committee formed, or audit committee formed, which was June or the summer or something like
It
that?
already is formed if it's this committee.
Right. Makes it easier, makes it more efficient. I understand that. And even with the process that I learned from Brandon of Public Works, you don't think that could possibly help the process of, they kind of send out this newsletter or survey to people who want to volunteer for that, and they come and they sit for whatever time we need them, but they will be, of course, allotted, and we would plan for that time that we need from them. I mean, we had two citizens sit on RFP proposal interviews for 6 hours today, from 10 to 4. So I think it's possible to have two qualified individuals sit on the committee.
It's an interesting supposition, but Oklahoma City has 800,000, I think it is a population. We have 130,000. And so, the professional population in Oklahoma City is greater than Norman's is.
Right.
We shipped all that up there. I think that's a difficult discussion. I would rather start simple
Yeah.
and then get larger later. It's just supposition, and yes, sir.
Yeah, I could see that, like evolving it, starting here and then figuring out where we're at because it's new, and then evolving it potentially into a different committee at some point. If I understood correctly, though, before, the audit discussion is every 3 months or quarterly.
Yes.
So if we're looking for citizens to serve, we would need them to show up once every 3 months
Yes.
to a meeting.
Yes.
So 4 times a year But one of those might be in April.
I would try my best not to make that one in April. I understand in this profession, the spring season is a lot of pressure for everybody.
I mean, part of me, I'm not opposed at all to seeing it, what, if there is any interest, being like, for four meetings a year, would you be interested in serving on, as a citizen representative on a audit committee for the city? That might be more doable for sure than trying to find somebody to come every month.
Right.
So, but I'm not opposed to there being a separate committee. There's other council committees that have subcommittees, like the bike advisory, but I know you and Mayor Clark were both trying to reduce the number of committees. I think Mayor Miller wanted to also, and we ended up creating like 5 more.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have a lot of citizens that want to be involved, which is good.
Yeah.
But I would probably agree that starting it in this committee, gauging whether we could find 1 or 2 citizens that would be willing to come in quarterly and participate in this meeting, and then figuring out if that's the best way to do it, or maybe we find out that, yeah, a separate committee from this one would be best. It's just audit, you know, but probably starting here would be the best.
Well, please.
So that would be in June, though,
Yes.
to find those folks.
Yes,
It's not
that
like
would be
we have to find them right now. So we could potentially see us meeting for finance in June and having potentially 2 members of the public who are qualified join us in that discussion.
Yes, that would be ideal, but if they're not here, then the discussion must go on.
And make my mouth work. As we sit down and look at that, if we started not with an expectation this June, just to get the track on the train, just we're going down the thing. Since it's our resolution or charter or whatever we're gonna call it, as it sits there, we can always add to and subtract from. I would just suggest that in your first iteration of that, in the paragraph that you have that describes the committee itself, that we start off with the idea that it's just us.
Okay.
And then put in there some kind of phrase that says, that gives us the ability to amend
Okay.
on the fly. That's
Oh, it's in
obviously
there.
not.
Council can
Yeah,
make suggestions for amendments.
I mean, I may be amazed that there are people that want to do this. And because we haven't put any restrictions on who the public is. Because actually, does that mean they could, in my opinion, that makes it any citizen in the state of Oklahoma or the U.S.
Oh, no.
And so, yeah, we
I
want,
would like to restrict it to, of course,
Norman.
residents of Norman
I would
who are
too.
qualified.
but that's, and those are the little itty bitty refinements that I
Right,
think
that
we're
will,
going to find.
and then you will limit your pool
Yeah,
with those simple restrictions.
go ahead.
And so next Tuesday is the Oklahoma Society of CPAs Norman Chapter Luncheon.
Okay.
So I could, make an announcement and just kind of get a feel for the room on how many Norman Chapter members would maybe be interested or not, just so we can kind of get a feel for, out of 30 people in the room, which one of you or how many of you may or may not be interested. And then we can kind of, gauge it.
That's a wonderful idea.
I mean, if we get a
Councilman.
ton of hands, then that's one thing. But
Right.
if like no hands,
Then
or if
we
they
have to
laugh at me
figure-
and think, you know how much we already work already?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if it's charter or muni code, but we already have like requirements for who can serve, like somebody who's related to one of us can't, city employee can't, and they have to be a resident of Norman. So
Okay. so
there's
we're good.
restrictions in place.
Right.
That's
So
true.
if this becomes a codified committee, then all of those restrictions would apply to this committee as well.
Okay, and so those, what Shakira's gonna put into the charter is just an additional qualification for that particular thing. Okay, perfect. That's how I would do it. And then we can start out, and if we sit down there, we'll have to get an interpretation on if it's another committee, does it always meet in executive session, or is that even allowable for those topics and all the rest of those kinds of things?
It's allowable for public bodies under certain circumstances, and so
But we're not talking about personnel or property.
If you're talking about a potential claim or action,
Okay,
it could be a qualifying event for executive session, qualifying
Okay.
topic.
well, that gives the privacy that you're looking for.
Yes.
Let's start it that way. Do we agree? Okay, start simple.
Agreed.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now Mr. Francisco puts the cherry on the ice cream.
Didn't really highlight anything on the monthly expenditure and revenue reports. I would say that our sales tax for the month of January, which again is reflecting November sales, was up 1.78%. So now fiscal year to date, we are within 1/3 of 1% of our projected revenue. I
Pretty
used to
accurate.
take great pride in how well I projected, but now it's freak luck. I mean, but we're doing okay. And I suspect that our February report is gonna be down somewhat just from the standpoint of where we're comparing the historical rate of February revenues. The holiday shopping period is much less concentrated in December than it used to be. You now have these Black Friday sales that go on the whole month of November, all that sort of thing. So I suspect that you're gonna see a little bit of a downturn next month. But again, for the fiscal year, I think we're okay.
Perfect. And does use tax, are they somehow?
There are some ups and downs. The use tax holiday period is spread out, October, November, December, because people are worried about getting things delivered on time and that sort of thing. So we're kind of past what we're going to get from the holiday use tax shopping period.
Or you could be like my wife and buy presents in the summer and forget about them and buy more presents. So, yes, sir, I'm sorry.
No, I saw a whole story, in-depth thing about Black Friday and how it doesn't really exist anymore. How like, even 10 years ago, people would get done with Thanksgiving and they would go and camp out and wait outside the big box stores and all night to try to get in, and they would, ram the doors and trample over people to get in. And it was talking about how that over the last 3, 4, 5 years, even partly before COVID, that kind of disappeared. Like, you don't see the stories about people, getting trampled trying to get into a store anymore on the Friday, because all the companies are doing like week-long Black Friday, or it's 2 weeks long, or it's a month long, or some are doing it in October, starting then. So it talked a lot about how the phenomenon of how it was before, people camping outside and being willing to trample other people to go grab a toy or a TV or something at discount, and how that's pretty much disappeared completely now.
Public safety.
But it's spread out. People are still spending the money. And what I noticed on here was the sales tax from the general fund was down slightly, 0.69%. But use tax was up 11.4%, which was interesting. And that the investment, which isn't a whole lot, but was up 215%. So pretty good, I think, right?
Yep, the market's really good.
So that
I
use
did
tax,
get boxed out for Barbie dolls, though.
boxed out for Barbie dolls. Yeah. So.
Compared to cities, we are just normally bubbling along, it seemed, unless you interpret that chart differently.
Oh, that's a good interpretation.
And that makes it good. Any further comments? Yes, sir.
So I think I asked last time, but under the city council section, the salaries and benefits says 144,000. And so I was thinking somebody's going to ask, we don't have a salary that combines, I think our combined salary is like 12,000 a year.
Yeah.
So the salaries and benefits portion of the city council budget is for our city, which, how is it broken down?
The biggest individual expenditure in that area is for the city's contribution to the retirement fund. So
Which we don't get.
Well, and the internal auditor's payroll is in that. as
Okay,
well.
I wasn't sure if Shakira's payroll and is Catherine's also?
No, it's just council and
Okay.
Shakira.
Okay, and not Daryl's either, so, okay.
And it's 1,200, not, well, 12,000.
Yeah, 1,200 a
In
year
case
for
the
each of
IRS
us.
is listening.
Well, I was thinking like our whole combined
Oh, there you
salaries,
go.
I think is 12,000 a year. So I was, just wanted to clarify that in case somebody looks at this and, I thought the council only made $100 a month. That's it.
On a good month.
Tiffany Verska was very quick to point out that I was wrong about that last meeting.
Oh,
They're in a separate cost center.
And then the salaries and benefits in the police department shows up 6.3%. Is that overtime?
That's
Pretty much.
overtime and pay raises, yes.
Overtime and pay raises, okay. And then the city's comparison, down just 0.33%, which is an improvement over the last, since, that's the lowest since August. Because since then, we were 0.99%, and then 7.5, and then 9.9, 6.9, and then 3.3, so it looks like we're on a positive, still less than last year comparatively, but again, to our historic highs of the last 2 years. And then, it looks like in the metro that Oklahoma City is the only one that's really in the positive right now.
Lawton,
Yeah.
oh, in the metro, okay.
But yeah, Norman and Moore and Edmond, all three. Edmond's slightly above, but it's interesting how it works that way, just a difference of a street or two.
Yeah.
and How sales tax can be one way or the other, so. But are you still seeing, a slight slowdown, but over the last 3 years? but-
Anecdotally, I really don't sense that. I really sense that the economy's kind of, what did you say, chugging along, just kind of okay. It's,
Yeah. Anything you notice, like we see, like restaurants are having a hard time, we've had some close,
We have had some close, but that's common.
or other stores and things like that, but at the same time, it's like, well, we're also experiencing like record high revenue, or people seem to be spending money, what are they spending it on?
Well, interestingly, and this is a national trend, but disposable income and disposable goods, luxury goods like jewelry, are actually doing quite well. You know, the big new Brockholz jewelry store is being built, that sort of thing. So that is an indication that people have some disposable income. And this coming Valentine's Day, I think, is going to show that again, where, I love my wife, I'm going to buy her diamonds. So.
What do you see with like inflation, like on a local level, I guess? What is it going
where-
down? Is it trending somewhere?
Where local inflation is driven mostly by gas prices and that sort of thing, gas prices are significantly down from where they were 6 months or so ago. So again, local inflation is not really measured that much, but I'm just, here's a proxy for local inflation, which is gas prices, and they're down, so.
And nationally, are you seeing a downward trend, or just because of presidential year or whatever?
No, I think it's really just, the actions of the Federal Reserve and that sort of thing. They're trying for the soft landing and all of that, and they think that they're gonna achieve the soft landing where avoiding a recession but slowing the economy to uncomfortably high rate of inflation. They're avoiding both of those things. So they feel like they're doing a really good job. And the Kansas City Fed chair is one of the major drivers in saying so, which is our Federal Reserve District.
Do you see rates going down further?
I see rates slowly going down a little bit, but not so much on the long end. So if you're asking about the upcoming general obligation bonds that we're about to sell, I told Daryl I'm trying to get below 4%, and you'll recall that we sold some below 1%.
I remember.
So yes, interest rates are up, but historically speaking, they're still at a historically low level, so.
It's all about perspective, I guess, right? Okay, thanks.
well, it's very handy because we see things on the TV that upset people, or people see things on the TV that upset them, particularly when the Fed says we're going to take 4 bumps this year and come down, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and people are going, well, everything must be all right. A little more complicated than one string.
Yeah. People feel like it's high
It
record
never
high
ceases to
inflation, but it's
amaze
not
me
really-
what, the reaction of the markets are to whatever the Federal Reserve says. When they say over the next, 4 times over the next year. But they had been saying 6 times over the next year. That means, oh, we're doing great, and so the market goes up and then, I don't know. It's just,
But I recall, like I was alive in the 70s, but I've read extensively about it. From what I understand, like interest rates and inflation was higher then in the late 70s and early 80s. As far
oh
as
yeah,
like
you had
buying a house.
double-digit inflation for 5 straight years.
But folks today, many will feel like, well, this is the worst it's ever been. But it's-
6%, oh my God.
They were paying, we were getting 14% on CDs. And you go, this is stupid. It's something's got to break, and it did.
Yeah, and then it goes from that down to less than 1% 5 years ago. Yeah. Fascinating, yeah.
Anything else from council? All right, then we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.